Welcome to today's lecture, an introduction to Microsoft Access. Today's class will have 3 virtual lectures. This deck followed by a deck on why to leverage Microsoft Access, and then another link to a YouTube site that will walk you through creation of tables. As mentioned in previous classes, Microsoft Access is typically used for classes like this as it's a personal database and good in terms of showing high-level features for creating and managing databases. At the highest level, you're going to be looking at a number of different components. First is your overall database file. This is going to be the file that you send to me when you're working on your Access Workbench. As you're thinking from that size on down, contained within the file is a table. A table is a collection of data about a specific topic. Now within those tables you'll have fields. As mentioned in class, fields are different categories within the table. Additionally, we are having discussions around data types. We've had some discussions in earlier lectures around the need to ensure proper data type from a number perspective if you are doing functions on your data, and as we step through Microsoft Access over the course of the next week or so, we'll see that to greater detail. For those of you working off of Microsoft Access on your Macs, please remember that you need to go to the Anywhere apps on inside.loyola.edu in order to leverage Microsoft Access. For those of you working within the computer labs, you'll be able to launch Access as you would other Microsoft Office applications. Depending on the version that you're entering, you're going to be asked to create a blank Access database. This is key in terms of allowing yourself to use a wizard to create a new database or open an existing database. Depending on how you're entering Access on the Loyola network, you'll get one of 2 different versions. The older version is available on the Anywhere apps. The newer version is available within the computer labs. Essentially, these will all function in the same manner. Once Access starts up, you will be prompted to create a new database or open an existing one. Essentially, you're going to double-click on the icon for the database which you wish to create. Typically, I recommend that you change and save the database to your network drive or locally on the machine while working. Please note, however, due to the Loyola network constraints, you're probably going to want to make sure that you're saving your databases frequently onto your own network drive. If you are creating a database without the wizard, you will be prompted to create a blank Access database. If you have already opened the database or closed the dialog box, you can click the New Database on the toolbar and then double-click the Blank Database icon on the General tab. The third YouTube link for today's class will show this more in depth. Looking at an earlier version of Access, you can see different information in terms of location for databases that you're creating. There's a number of items that you're going to need to be cognizant of. Specifically, you're going to want to be able to understand how to create tables in Design View, as well as then to understand and look at the database within a datasheet view as well. On numerous times I've defined tables, and I know that from a quiz perspective you all like it when I call things specifically out. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of what I'm defining a table as. To me, a table is a collection of data about a specific topic, such as students or contexts. Typically, using a separate table for each topic means that you store the data only once, which makes your database more efficient and reduces data entry errors. This ties back to our previous examples related to an instructor database as well as a student database in terms of a course registration system. From an organizational perspective, using that student example again, you'll see information for the unique student identifier, in this case using the social security number, first name, last name, date of birth, etc., where the student records contain the same type of information for every student. If you are going to create a table from scratch in the design view, what you'll want to do is, under the file name column, enter the categories for your table. And then make sure under your data type column that you select the correct field. Now this is going to have multiple different options. For example, in Access, the text and memo data field types allow the field to store either text or numbers, but the number data type will allow the field to store numbers only. Numerical data types store numerical data that will be used in mathematical calculations. This we've discussed in previous classes, so please ensure if you're going to be performing any mathematical calculations ensure that you select the number type. Other data types include date time, yes, no, auto number, and picture. The following screen shows under the description the type of format to expect. I typically request all students to at least put some information in the descriptive tab. This will help you from a design perspective, especially if your field names are similar from table to table. This is an example from creating a movie listing database where a movie title will be the field name, data type is text, and the description obviously maps out to the name of the movie. One of the things that you see on the tables is a little small key. That is how Microsoft Access maps out and shows the primary key, which is essentially one or more fields whose values uniquely identify each record in a table. As previously discussed, for example, from a Loyola perspective, Loyola ID is the unique identifier for all things related to you as a student. Please note that a primary key does not allow null values and must always have a unique value. A primary key is used to relate a table to foreign keys in other tables. Note, you don't have to define the primary key, but it's a good idea. If you don't define a primary key, Microsoft Access asks that if you would like to create one when you save the table. To do this, simply select the number field and select the primary key button. After you do this, please save the table. At different times during the class, you'll be asked to switch views between the datasheet view and the design view. As previously mentioned, the datasheet view displays the view which allows you to enter raw data into your database, while the design view displays the view which allows you to enter fields, data types, and descriptions. It's very key that you understand how to toggle between both views, and we'll cover this multiple times over the next week. Once your database has been created, you can go into the datasheet view and simply chug into entering the data by hand versus importing from, say, an Excel database. From a row manipulation perspective, a number of steps we'll be doing in terms of showing you how to add a row. In doing this, you would simply do a drop down to a new line and enter the information. Also, specific instructions on updating a record, where you can simply select the record and field you want to update and change its data with what you want, or deleting the record, which will select the entire row and hit the delete key on the keyboard. As we get later into the class, we will be discussing how to best leverage forms. From a Microsoft Access perspective, a form is nothing more than a graphical representation of the table. It's essentially the user interface, which will allow you to go in and update and delete records to your table without having to go into the datasheet view. Please note that although a form can be named different from a table, they both still manipulate the same information and the same exact data. So if you change a record in a form, it will be changed in the table. I highly recommend to use forms when you have numerous fields in the table. This way you can see all the fields in one screen, whereas if you were in the table view or datasheet view, you would have to keep scrolling to get to the field you desire. The following instructions map you through creating a form using the wizard. Please take a moment to take notes on this specific piece, as it's quite helpful in terms of creating forms within Access. The easiest being creating a form using the wizard. As you step through these, please note that the best way to do this is to go into Access and essentially start creating forms and creating databases. I highly recommend doing this prior to completing Access Workbench 1 to familiarize yourself with the user interface. Access also gives you the capability to create reports. Access defines reports as an effective way to present data in a printed format. Fortunately, within Access, you have control over the size and appearance of everything on the report, so you can see the information just the way you want. This screen shows you some quick steps of how to create a report. My recommendation would be to pause this lecture, review and read these steps, and go into Microsoft Access to try it. Essentially, using the Create report using the wizard, it will allow you to select the tables that you wish to pull information from as well as the queries, and then preview the report. This concludes part 1 of the virtual lecture series.